Good morning, everyone. How are we on this Thursday morning? I'm sorry I'm a bit late, 10 minutes, but time got away from me a little. And as this dog annoyed me. So welcome to a interesting Thursday morning here in Melbourne. We'll get straight into it because we're running behind. We'll give you our first look of the bay, as we always do. Yesterday it was pretty bad weather, rubbish, really. We had rain, we had cloud. We still got a bit of cloud over there. Bay's pretty chill. Not much wind, but yeah, no, I dare say we're probably in for more rain. Sadly, but we need it. Like I said yesterday, we need it. We've had a good run this winter, and we're nearly at the end of winter, 30th of July. Doesn't the year fly? Before we know it, in Victoria will be an election, and we'll be into 2027, and we'll be heading towards a federal election very soon after that. So end of next year, early 28. So we're not far away before we get the chance to kick out elbow. And I emphasize the word chance. I'm not too sure we're going to be successful in November, even though everybody in the state wants to kick out this woeful ALP government. I'm not too sure after the events of the last 48 hours that's going to happen. So that will be devastating if it does, but we move on. We've survived worse. We'll make this state better in some manner or form. We'll get there in the end. So it's a matter of persistence. So before I start on my normal rant, let's get our Bible passage today. It'd be interesting considering what we've discussed too. A lot of these times, these passages are relevant to our rants. Let's see what it's got to say today. July, God, I can't turn a page. Right, 31st. Well, this is interesting. We'll say Joshua 1 through 9. God commands Joshua. Excuse me. Here's a good example of the man of God's choice being ready at a crucial moment in Israel's history. God gave Commander-in-Chief Joshua a big promise. After the death of the Lord's servant Moses, the Lord spoke to Moses' helper Joshua, son of Nun. He said, "My servant Moses is dead. Get ready now, you and all the people of Israel, and cross the river Jordan into the land that I'm giving them. As I told Moses, I have given you and all my people the entire land that you will be marching over. Your borders will reach from the desert in the south to the Lebanon mountains in the north, from the great river Euphrates in the east, through the Hittite country to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. Joshua, no one will be able to defeat you as long as you live. I will be with you as I was with Moses. I will always be with you. I will never abandon you. Be determined and confident, for you will be the leader of these people as they occupy this land, which I promised their ancestors. Just be determined, be confident, and make sure that you obey the whole law that my servant Moses gave you. Do not neglect any part of it, and you will succeed wherever you go. Be sure that the book of law is always ready in your worship. Study it day and night, and make sure that you obey everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Remember that I have commanded you to be determined and confident. Don't be afraid or discouraged, for I, the Lord God, am with you wherever you go." A lot to take out of that one. I like the last bit. I've commanded you to be determined and confident. Don't be afraid or be discouraged. So many of us need that message. All right. And God in our lives. So I don't know whether it's so relevant to what we're going to speak about today, but it's certainly something that what you're about to look at that we all should be when people are in positions of influence, positions of power. It used to be a fact that you used to have to, what's the word? It used to be a fact you had some commitments and obligations and duties, and a lot of that was based on our Christian culture there. You know, be confident, understand God's commandments, understand who you're serving, understand that you're there for the best interest of everyone. What I'm about to show you goes against all of that. And overnight, and I've, like so many of you probably, over there, I've tried to get on with life and put COVID behind me, all right? But overnight, they had a Senate hearing into Dr. Fauci. Now, it's probably all over the X feeds. I haven't had a chance to look at the news, but Fauci just took the fifth over there. The fifth minute, that means you don't have to answer any questions for fears you might incriminate yourself and then have to go to a court of law. But he did that even though he had a pardon from Joe Biden, and this is causing a bit of a controversy because there's a lot of them saying, the old order pen, and a lot of people saying that pardon isn't legitimate. If it was legitimate, Fauci had nothing to worry about. He was pardoned. They couldn't do anything about it. But he took the Fifth Amendment something like 112 times in this hearings to questions, and reasonable questions we all should get answered. So I'm not going to talk much about it. I'm sadly going to take you back to those times. I was watching this late last night and early this morning when I got up. One of the reasons I was a bit late. So I'll just pick some relevant clips. Now, these clips go for about 8 minutes. And there's one clip at the end of a lady that speaks for all of us, I think. So I apologise for taking you back to those times. They were, for me, horrendous times. I was a single man. I didn't have any family. I was living in a granny flat at the back of a property for that period. And you're basically restricted from going anywhere. For me, and even though I was a single guy, I was a social guy. I got out all the time. I coached. I met people. And I enjoy doing that. I enjoy doing this podcast, for example. But all of a sudden, and a lot of the reasons I can do the podcast now is I did do, when I was coaching and we were banned from meeting each other, I did do a lot of live streams with my players that I had that we couldn't get for training. We did it online through Zoom, as so many of us did. But you did find yourself in between those, if you're like me by yourself, basically staring at four walls. And for me, that was probably, I've always been a very resilient person. I've copped my fair share, trust me, of different disasters in my life. And I get through them all right. I really do. And I'm also a pretty much half glass full person. But that COVID period where for nearly 3 years, you were locked away basically in your room and you were restricted on where you can go. The only time I got out to get to meet people in many of those, that time in Melbourne, was when I went to the supermarket. And I actually enjoyed my time at the supermarket. I could have a chat with a few people, do all this, do my shopping, and feel human again. And to this day, it never happened before. I actually now enjoy going to the supermarket for those reasons, which when you think about it is kind of crazy. And I came to terms with it later on. And I think for me, that was the first time I would say I came close or even was a victim of depression because you just couldn't get out to see anyone. I thought about this long and hard later on. And I did a bit of reading on what depression is. And I felt that I had a lot of the attributes that you need for that depression. What do they call it when they analyze you for depression? I think I probably would have qualified a little bit because you go into your shell because you've got no human connection. Or I'd say you've got limited human connection for 3 years. I mean, you could still talk to someone over the phone or whatever or via email. It's not the same. It's not the same as getting out and interacting with other human beings. And to be denied that, and that was just there was people that went through far worse than what I did. My business suffered. I'm sure everyone else's business has suffered. It was put back 3 years. Something when you're at the age of your late 50s, going into your 60s was very tough. So I had to restart my business. I had to put it in hibernation for 3 years because it dealt with small business, which you couldn't go to, dealt with sport, which we couldn't congregate with. So everything that I was making an income of, it just shut down in a matter of months. So I put it in hibernation, believing the politicians, this was going to be 6 weeks. 3 years later, we finally come out of it, and, I've got on with it a bit since then. But that had a big impact on everything I did. And I'm sure there's many of you out there that went through far worse, especially those who would have lost loved ones to either the COVID, or they've lost loved ones to the bloody vaccine, or they've still got those loved ones with the vaccine, but they've had responses to those vaccine injuries. Now, anytime you bring that up, it gets poo-pooed all the time. So I'm sorry if I'm bringing up some nasty memories, but I went through this last night listening to this testimony. And the reason I think it's important that we all share this, is we've got to realize what a bunch of lying, distrustful, evil people we had in charge at that moment, and why, with elections coming up, it's more important than ever we learn the lessons from that time and make sure we get the right people in charge. Right now, if something similar happened, what do you think Albo and his lot would do to us? And we're, ever since before then and going through then, we've had our liberties restricted and taken away. So I think it's important we do look back a little bit, and these vouching hearings we all should be looking at. So if you've watched them, you don't need to watch them again. I will comment at the end of each video. There are some great parts here where the Republican senators just rip Fauci to bits. So there is some entertainment to it as well. So anyway, without any further ado, let's have a look at it. Like I said, I apologize if I there's two videos here of Fauci being ripped, but also his persona, which is even more important. So I just got to get it up. Sorry, guys. Here we go. First one. They go for about 8 minutes. So good, gives me a chance to have a coffee. But gives you a chance to listen into what I listen. So this is Senator Josh Hawley. If you haven't heard him before, he is magnificent. So anyway, this is a shorter one. This goes for a minute 14.
You wanted to lambast Trump. You wanted to make sure that nobody else stole your spotlight. Yeah, well, silence is admission. And here's the real thing. At the end of the day, it wasn't just about the money, really, was it? It was really about a power trip. I mean, through all of this, you want to be the most famous scientist in the world. You were so focused on getting every award and every drop of cash that you could, all because you wanted to be on TV. You wanted to be the sun god of science. You wanted to be the guy who was in charge of it all. You wanted to lambast Trump. You wanted to make sure that nobody else stole your spotlight. You wanted to be the guy. You had time to sit for InStyle magazine. Here's what you were doing with your time. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you can't answer questions for the American people. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you're here taking the fifth. You could sit for InStyle magazine and get $1 million in cash awards, but now the cat's got your tongue. I bet he does. I tell you what, here's my conclusion from all of this. This was really all about you the whole time. Somewhere along the way, you lost your way. You may have been a good public servant at one time. I don't know. But I can tell you from reading your emails now, from looking at what you did, how you used your employees, somewhere along the line, it became all about you. You became a narcissist and a megalomaniac and a liar. And you've lied to the American people, and you've lied to this body. And you've disgraced your profession by doing it. You called yourself the most famous scientist in the world. You've done more to harm science than anybody in my lifetime. And I hope you'll go home and write that in your diary.
Ouch. That was a mic drop. If you've been following this, he's had his diaries published, and they don't reflect well on him at all. It's just proved everything that guy said about him being a narcissist, a liar. He manipulated, if you remember, where the virus originated from. It came from a research center, the Wuhan lab. And he manipulated it to make people say it came from the markets because he was going to be implicated in the whole thing. He's gotten away with it now, but he's 85. He doesn't have much longer for this world. He'll have to answer to the greatest judge of all very, very soon. So, but he should have been answering for it now. A lot of people went through a lot of hell, largely at the hands of this arsehole here. I've no doubt of that now, and you'll see why as we go through it. So let's get to the next one. I just have to play this. There's a couple of Senator Bernie. I've never heard of this Marino. He's worth a listen again. Let's have a listen to what
I'll echo Senator Johnson's comments about your opening statement, Mr. Chairman. I think it was dead on. Very, very well done. Mr. Fauci, do you know who David Schertler is?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Now, this is a longer video. Now, this is an important one. He does this to every single question. I set up to watch a lot of it, but it was obvious he was going to be doing this whole thing. And in the end, I ended up going to bed, which is probably a good thing. I would not have got up probably early enough to do this. but he answered with the Fifth Amendment every time, every single question. It was over 100 answers that he gave this Fifth Amendment every time. What person does that when they've already been pardoned? What person will not answer questions that we're all asking? We all want the answers to these questions. We all want to know why for 3 years we went through that COVID hell. And importantly, I want to know why my government fell for this guy's bullshit. But this is the answer I give. There's only one reason he's not answering questions, because they will implicate him, because he is guilty of sin. I don't need to worry about now them proving it. His behavior in this hearing, in this next 9 minutes that you watch, proves how guilty he was without needing any proof. Have a listen.
Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. What does the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution say?
9 minutes, guys. Goes for 9 minutes, guys, and there is a part here this guy swears a bit, so heads up. But I don't mind it because of the person he's swearing at. But anyway, he's got to have some justice going his way. I won't interrupt it now for 9 minutes. Enjoy the whole part.
Yeah. On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
No, I'm just asking you what it says.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
I'm going to give.
So he won't even answer that question, the simple question about the Constitution. He's got an army of lawyers behind him, by the way. This is not a normal person. He's worth millions. And he's got one of the best defense law firms behind him giving him the advice. Yeah, and yet they won't answer a question.
The Constitution to my aide. He'll bring it over to you so you can have it for future reference. I think it's something that every American should know what the Constitution says. Do you know who wrote the Fifth Amendment?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
On and on.
So you're invoking a right that you don't know who wrote it or what it says. Is that correct?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Wow. All right, let me tell you who David Schertler is for the audience, because he was ejected by the chairman. He's a high-profile criminal attorney.
So in the hearing, they injected his main attorney out of the hearing because Fauci just kept invoking the Fifth Amendment right through it. This is Senator Rand Paul's questioning. And then at the end of it, his lawyer wanted to say something, even though he'd never been invited to this hearing. Rand Paul shut him down and kicked him out. So this is who they're talking about.
He's represented some really great people, like Senator Bob Menendez. Maybe that's somebody who my Democrat colleagues may remember took gold bars as bribes from the Egyptians. And there's an article here in the Washington Free Beacon that talks about why you would hire a guy like David Schertler. And the comment is, if you're in deep shit, that's who you call. Do you feel like you're in deep shit?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Clearly, what you think today is that somehow you're above reproach. Somehow you feel like you don't need to be treated like a normal American. And
they're in. People, this is why it's so important you see this. Now, when you look at Fauci, also put in your mind's eye, Scott Morrison. Put in your mind's eye, Dan Andrews. Put in your mind's eye, Gladys Berejiklian. Put in your mind's eye, Anis Penestalia, whatever her name was. Put in your mind's eye, that chant woman from New South Wales, that muppet we had down here as the health official with the beard, whatever, I can't remember his name. All these bastards that lectured at us throughout COVID, the daily press conferences. Put in your mind's eye, because those everyday people, they treat us with contempt. One thing at 63, I used to think politics was an honourable profession. And not even a profession. I forget what they call it, but a service community. If you think politicians and bureaucrats are there to serve us, this testimony proves without a doubt they're not. Keep watching.
Can you do me a favor in the audience and stand up if during the time of the COVID pandemic, you were called a racist for calling the virus a Wuhan virus or the China virus? If you thought the 6-foot rule was total crap, if you thought the vaccine wasn't something that you should take, if you thought it was outrageous the way the mask policy was rolled out, if you were fired from your job for not taking that vaccine, including members of the military, if you thought closing schools was catastrophically stupid, and that you thought that during these times saying these things made you somehow a lesser human being. Dr. Fauci, can you just turn?
And I would be standing up at that point. I don't know why those police officers were not making those people sit down. They were asked to stand up by the person on the committee, but whatever. And see this guy, he's looking around saying, why are you making them sit down? I would have been standing up. I regret it to this day, but I had 2 of the vaccines. They didn't have a massive impact on me, but I didn't want them. I took them so I could do my work. And that was as we're coming out of the pandemic. I got through the whole thing, but I just needed some income to pay rent. And it's like so many of you, no doubts, I'd be standing right there, right behind. I would love to be standing behind.
Look at the people behind you. You're not willing to do that? That's not a question. It's not a question. To your lawyer, it's not a question. It's a request. All you have to do is look up from your lawyers and look at the people who were absolutely shamed for saying what we know now to be the truth. You can't even look at them?
Look at that bastard. He doesn't want to turn around. And it's all about him. He does not want to face the people. And for every one of those, think of another million. So you might have 10 standing up behind him. Well, there's 10 million people that have all been impacted, that were called skeptics, COVID deniers, all this sort of thing. And that all came from this lurch here and his acolytes like Dan Andrews, Scott Morrison, Greg Hunt. Unbelievable.
That's a question. Are you able to look at them? You can sit down in the audience.
Who takes the Fifth Amendment to that? Who takes the Fifth Amendment to that?
In Ohio, during the depth of the coronavirus pandemic, decided to go to her high school football game for her son. They hadn't been out much. The kids had been learning at school, and then the school got shut down. They hadn't really gotten much out of that education. As any parent knew, that remote learning was no learning at all. But it was a Friday night. Her son wanted to go watch a buddy go play football. So they went to the stadium. They sat alone, far from everybody else, just a mom, a dad, a few kids. They didn't feel they needed to wear masks because it was stupid, because they were outside. They all live together. They're not near anybody. Dr. Fauci, do you know what happened to that mom and that family? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
They were dragged out of that stadium and arrested. Those policies were put in place because you had moronic politicians that listened to the words of a megalomaniac who was more interested in having met a Kardashian than the suffering of the American people. And that is you.
What he's talking about there is in his diaries throughout that COVID period, he was writing down multiple times how building himself up when he'd met celebrities. He had dinner with Tapper from CNN. All throughout COVID, he was having dinner with Jake Tapper from CNN, the same person that got on CNN and lectured us all about our responsibilities and all this nonsense. So This guy was in it for the money. He was in it for the celebrity status. He was in it to promote himself and his ego. He wasn't in it for your or my health at all.
Your advice to communities like that, to idiotic politicians who enforce those rules, arrested that mom for watching a football game with her own family outside. When that story broke, I said to myself, I cannot stand idly on the side and watch this happen. It was about 6 years ago today that I decided I'm going to give up my businesses, sell them all, run for office, run for the United States Senate. Here I am sitting in front of you 6 years later saying, who the fuck do you think you were for doing that?
I'm sorry for the language, but that's great. That is great. That's a person who's determined. Can we have politicians like this guy in our country? He sold up everything just to tell Fauci to his face, who the fuck do you think you are? Well done, Senator. Well done.
It is a total disgrace what you did to this country. And if my Democrat colleagues are standing there defending you, I hope the voters of the United States of America watch the clips of every one of you doting on a guy who was more interested in being a celebrity than saving American people. I will make it my mission to make certain that every single one of those Democrats who did that will see that clip over and over and over again. Because there is no defense of what you did.
There is not.
You may have had a 50-plus year legacy of public service, but it ends in total and complete disgrace. So let me ask you an opportunity to answer one question. Will you apologize, just apologize, to the people who you harmed through your actions? Will you say, do you have the dignity to just say you're sorry?
Now remember, right now he's got a pardon. He has a pardon back to 2014. And the reason he goes back to 2014, that is when Obama banned gain-of-function research. And this prick went behind him and went over to China to continue his gain-of-function research, which led to the outbreak of COVID. Now, he's got a pardon. They can't get him on anything. He's been pardoned by President Biden, which in itself was a disgrace. It was on the last day. Now, there's a bit of argument over that as whether that was done with the auto pen by a staffer and not by Joe Biden himself. So whether they can get to the bottom of that, who knows? But he's got a pardon. So if he apologizes, there's no repercussions for him. Let's listen to what he says.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
So you won't apologize to the military members who Joe Biden summarily dismissed from the military for not taking the vaccine?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the business owners that lost their business, shattered their lives, and they'll never recover?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the moms who had to force their infant children, 2, 3, 4-year-olds, to put masks on, and what that did and how that traumatized those kids?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the family members of the people who died because they took your advice and not only got the first vaccine, but the 5, 6 other boosters that they did not need?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to that mom from Ohio for being arrested for watching a football game with her family?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my
Can't even operate the mic.
the Constitution.
So you didn't know who wrote the Fifth Amendment. It's James Madison. Lived in this town. I can only wonder what he would think of somebody like you invoking his writings to shield culpability for the actions that you took. It's no secret why you have to hire the biggest dirtbag attorney on the planet because of what you did. I hope you're paying him well. And I hope that one way or the other, somewhere, sometime, you answer for your crimes.
Wow. Wow. Well done, Senator. I mean, the one thing I give the Republican senators great credit for in this hearing is while Fauci kept giving the Fifth Amendment, they could have easily got annoyed with that and stopped asking questions. They just grilled him. They grilled him. And now he might not face any repercussions in a court of law. His reputation is tarnished, and no one deserves their reputation tarnished more than this bastard. And I say bastard with good reason. We'll show you, and I just got to show this. I hate to dredge up this, but this is just part of what we went through. Actually, before I do this, I'll see if I've got in the other clips. I hope I've got it, because this part of the hearing was damning. Now, we might have, this is shared by Rita Penner. It's Josh Hawley again. We'll watch the first bit of it. All right, so you'll see what I mean. This is really important.
Well, nothing says honesty like taking the Fifth, huh, Doc? Let's try something. What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color's the carpet in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's just get one thing straight. You don't have any rights under the Fifth Amendment because you've been pardoned, as you very well know. As the Supreme Court has been clear for a century and more, Brown versus Walker, 1896, when he has been pardoned, he may not stand upon his privilege. You know that. Your lawyers sitting behind you now shifting nervously in their chairs. They know it. This isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about the law. This is about contempt. Contempt for this body and contempt for the American people.
When they say American people, that means every bloody citizen across this globe that went through his bullshit. It wasn't just the American people. It was the Australian people, the English people, European people. Everywhere that we had restrictions was a direct result of him and his colleagues.
But I think I know why you're doing it. It's because you don't want to answer questions. It's because you did all kinds of terrible things. It's because during the pandemic, you got rich, didn't you? You got rich.
Here's where it's
while people were dying, hundreds of thousands of Americans, over 1 million in the end, and you were getting rich. And not only were you doing that, you were using federal employees with taxpayer money to apply for and solicit cash prizes for you personally. Cash prizes.
Now listen to the rest of this. While this bastard had us all locked down, while our businesses were going bankrupt, while our kids were being denied school, while we were all forced to wear masks, while we were all forced to be home by 9 o'clock, while we were all forced to stay within city limits, while we were all forced not to participate in sport, while we were all forced not to visit family members, and for those of you who were forced not to be able to attend a funeral or watch a loved one die, this bastard was using federal employees, American taxpayers' dollars, to apply for grants to line his own pockets. This bastard I can't say he's the only one in it, but he participated through his gain-of-function research in that Wuhan lab to initiate COVID-19, put us all through that misery, and then while we were going through that misery, he lined himself up with celebrities, TV spots, politicians, and used taxpayers' dollars to line his own pockets and make himself infinitely richer. He put us through misery while promoting himself. Keep listening.
Totaling over $1 million. You did all of that during the pandemic, didn't you? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You remember Greg Folkers? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Your chief of staff is the answer. Do you remember Patricia Conrad? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth
We're not gonna
Amendment to
answer
the
that.
Constitution.
She was your personal assistant. And what were these individuals doing in the depth of the pandemic in November of 2020 when millions of Americans were suffering from COVID? What were they doing? I tell you what they're doing. Folkers was on your behalf soliciting and gathering information for a cash award.
Look at Fauci's eyes. He can't even look Josh Hawley in the eye while he's given that. There's only one reason you don't look another person in the eye. There's only one reason you use the Fifth Amendment so you don't have to answer questions. He's guilty as sin. I don't need a court of law to realize that. Look at the facts that Josh Hawley's about to present. He can't look him in the eye because he knows it's true.
Let's look at it. We've got his email right here, right over my shoulder. Volker says, I'm working on this nomination for the Dan David Award for Fauci. We need to beef up the COVID part. Do you have language in the can that you could share that delineates how we responded in new ways to COVID? He sends this to multiple federal employees. What was the Dan David Award? Do you remember, Doc?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
It was a $900,000 cash award. $900,000 cash
Look, his
award.
eyes are down.
And he
He
got
knows
it
he's guilty.
because he used federal employees to get it.
$1
And this
million
wasn't the
bucks.
only award, was it, Dr. Fauci? In fact, you applied for and received at least 8 other federal cash prizes on federal time using federal employees and federal resources. Here they are over my shoulder. Besides the Dan David Award, you've got the Partnership for Public Service, you've got the Adelson Prize, you've got the Smithsonian Award, you've got the National Academy of Medicine's Award, you've got the CDC Foundation. In fact, you turned your staff into a full-time application machine. You actually wrote to people and said, do you think maybe I'd qualify? And you got cash for all of this.
So importantly, if you look just behind him, he's come with the evidence. That's all the staff, the publicly funded staff that he had, 8 federal employees to apply for awards. And then those awards that he just read out, they're the awards that he pursued during COVID. While we were all suffering, while this guy should have been dedicated to finding a cure to COVID or resolving it or whatever, he wasn't. He had 2, 4, 6, 8 staff paid by the American taxpayers to pursue these awards. He wasn't working to stop COVID. He was working to line his own pockets. When I was listening to this, I wasn't aware of any of that. I was absolutely disgusted, as we all should have been. Keep watching.
And you got cash for all of this. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 employees, was it? In fact, you used 8 separate federal employees on federal time using federal resources to solicit cash awards. Isn't that true?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Here they are right over my shoulder. Here's all of them. The people that you use, federal employees, so that you could go and get cash money. And the most hilarious part is that you weren't content to even dragoon them into applying for all of these cash awards. You then had them go out to the ethics agencies and ethics watchdogs and demand that you be able to get the money. That's right. We've got it in your emails. Your staff and employees on federal time, using federal resources, being paid with federal dollars, are soliciting cash for you. And then they're turning around and saying to the agency, we don't want just an answer. We want to get to yes, because Fauci wants the money. He wants it. We want to get to yes, and yes takes time. This is your chief of staff again, using federal email to pressure the agency's own ethics people so that you could get money, so that you could get rich. And it violated the law, didn't it, Dr. Fauci? Didn't it?
Amendment.
It violated the law, didn't it?
Is that a question?
It is a question. You can answer. Go ahead.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Federal law, as you very well know, prohibits the solicitation of cash awards or other personal benefits for federal employees. And it certainly prohibits.
And the problem is Joe Biden pardoned him, so he can't be got at. It's pathetic. There's a law for them and there's a law for us.
That's using your own employees to do this. 5 CFR section 2635-205B. It says it right there in black and white. You cannot use federal resources, federal dollars, federal employees, federal offices, federal email, federal time to solicit cash awards. And you did all of it. And the worst part is thousands of people were dying while you were doing it. You were supposed to be the nation's doctor and you're playing one on TV. But this is what you were doing with your time.
Definition of evil. Definition of evil. Unbelievable. I mean, when I was watching this last night, I could not believe what I was hearing. I mean, had no time for this guy. I had no time, zero time for this guy and all the others. I'll get to them when we finish this clip. While millions were being restricted, not just millions, hundreds of millions across the globe were being restricted. People were dying. People were denied. This bastard was lining his pockets illegally. And we can't get at him, not in America, not here, because he's been pardoned. Unbelievable. It's just gobsmacking. And listen, it brought all my memories of COVID flooding back. And sorry if it does yours, but we all need to hear this. We all need to know what we've been dealing with.
That true.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, I can see why. I can certainly see why. You know what I can't quite figure out is that why you were so obsessed with it, because you're already rich. I mean, and your scheme worked here. I mean, your net worth now is north of $12 million.
Unbelievable.
You got over $1 million in cash awards during COVID, during a 12-month, 24-month span during COVID. $1 million you knocked down in cash money using federal resources. Now you're worth more than $12 million. You've got a pension that in its first year paid out north of $400,000 a year.
That's incredible. I mean, how do we as a society in Western civilization, and it happens here, Dan Andrews, he'd be worth God knows how much, and he's now living off a publicly funded pension. I mean, and he's young enough to still be working. He could be earning, and probably does, he still earns mega bucks through other companies, whether they're Chinese companies, whatever, and then the taxpayer funds him again. But if I don't pay a driver's a speeding fine, I'll keep getting that double until, I've got to pay a fortune. If we miss any sort of government payments that we have to make, they will come for us like you wouldn't believe. And it's all to fund bastards like this. It's just, I don't know. Gobsmacking is not a harsh enough word. It's disgusting.
1 million people dead, you're getting rich. 1 million people dead, you're using federal employees to get cash awards for you. 1 million people dead, and you're here taking the fifth because you don't want to admit that what really happened in all that time was a multi-month, multi-year course of self-dealing. Isn't that true, Dr. Fauci?
Take the fifth.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, well, silence is admission. And here's the real thing. At the end of the day, it wasn't just about the money, really, was it? It was really about a power trip. I mean, through all of this, you want to be the most famous scientist in the world. You were so focused on getting every award and every drop of cash that you could, all because you wanted to be on TV. You wanted to be the sun god of science. You wanted to be the guy who was in charge of it all. You wanted to lambaste Trump. You wanted to make sure that nobody else stole your spotlight. You wanted to be the guy. You had time to sit for InStyle magazine. Here's what you were doing with your time. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you can't answer questions for the American people. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you're here taking the fifth. You could sit for InStyle magazine and get $1 million in cash awards, but now the cat's got your tongue. I bet he does. I tell you what, here's my conclusion from all of this. This was really all about you the whole time. Somewhere along the way, you lost your way. You may have been a good public servant at one time, I don't know. But what I can tell you from reading your emails now, from looking at what you did, how you used your employees, somewhere along the line, it became all about you. You became a narcissist and a megalomaniac and a liar. And you've lied to the American people, and you've lied to this body. And you've disgraced your profession by doing it. You called yourself the most famous scientist in the world. You've done more to harm science than anybody in my lifetime. And I hope you'll go home and write that in your diary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That is brilliant.
Mr. Chairman.
That is brilliant. Senator Hawley, if you have never heard him before, you should watch him, look him up. He is brilliant in these Senate hearings. He just tears people apart with just brutal facts like he's just done that. And I'm sorry, I played the second part again. I played it earlier on, but it was so good to listen. If nothing else, it's good to get that bastard's face on the camera in front of the world. We're all looking at it, and this guy can't show his face in public again without people realizing what an asshole he really was. All that misery he inflicted on you, on me, on everybody. Got a couple more clips, and then I'll have my summary at the end of it. And I think there's something really important to take out of all this for us here in Australia. That's why I'm playing it. I wasn't going to be doing the episode about this, but I think it's important that we do, and that we share it. And it's look, for me, it's painful to share this. It was a horrific time. I hated it. But like I said, I'm not playing the victim. There's others that did far worse than me. I know collectively we all hated it, but it's important. Just a few clips just to wind you up a little bit more. Sorry. But if I had to watch it, you got to watch it. Let's go back into my bookmarks. Do you remember this? I saw this on it last night. Melinda, I gave her a shout out. Great follow. She brings up some good stuff. Remember our nurses? This was the nonsense while Fauci was lining his pocket. This is the nonsense that was going on. Now, we all saw these. Through COVID, it used to do my head in. They came out on a daily basis. Now, remember, during all this COVID, our hospitals were inundated. Our staff were overwhelmed. We needed more thing, all this sort of stuff. But they had the time to produce these videos. They look inundated to you? They look overwhelmed to you? Wards were full? They look inundated? We've got video after video after video. And they've obviously trained for these videos. Crazy. Insane. I won't play any more of it because it just does my head in. But we went all through that. While we were stuck in our rooms, they were out dancing. And we kept getting told how they were inundated. All nonsense. Now, the last clip I'm going to play is this lady is magnificent. It's only a short clip, but I think she summarizes all this up beautifully. All right. So let's have a listen to what she's got to say.
3 weeks later, because this is what wait, so hold on. So you're telling me that Anthony Fauci, who was already funding virus research in a Chinese lab with US tax dollars, kept a personal diary in which he admitted point blank that COVID fatality rates were far lower than what he eventually told Congress not 3 weeks later? Because this is what he told Congress.
If you count.
This is really important. This is really important. Listen to her stat she brings up.
All the cases of minimally symptomatic or asymptomatic infection, that probably brings the mortality rate down to somewhere around 1%, which means it is 10 times more lethal than the seasonal flu.
But lo and behold, in his personal journal, not 3 weeks before this, he wrote that COVID was like a bad influenza with a fatality rate more like 0.2 to 0.3%.
So he lied to Congress. That's illegal, number one. Number two, he lied to the globe, and then all the impacts of COVID came out of that. to all of us who said this was nothing more than a flu. And I got COVID. It was mild, nothing like a flu. I had to sit at home for 7 bloody days. And funnily, the only time I got COVID, this is interesting, the only time I got COVID was after the first vaccine injection. I lasted nearly 2 years without getting that vaccine, walking amongst people, all that sort of thing. Never looked like getting COVID. Got the vaccine, 2 weeks later, got COVID. And it was a nothing burger.
Which is only about a fifth the fatality rate that he reported to Congress. Then he went on to write that the situation with my national and international fame is explosive and really unimaginable and very flattering, bragging that he was the most famous and talked about person in the country and one of the most recognizable persons in the world.
One, I don't understand why people keep diaries, and why would you write that in your diary? Talk about a narcissist.
People's lives were ruined by this man. There were children who were kicked out of classrooms who never fully recovered. Kids with speech impairments and special needs were forced to wear filthy face masks for 2 years. People lost their jobs, entire businesses went under. Elderly people died in nursing homes alone. Women gave birth alone. People are now living with heart conditions caused by a rush vaccine that this guy wanted to mandate that came with risks that doctors weren't admitting or telling people about. And now we find out that on top of all of the rest of the corruption, this little troll who should have been living under a bridge somewhere taunting billy goats, but who somehow made it to be director of the NIH, knew full well that the fatality rate of this thing wasn't anywhere close to what he was telling the public, because he wanted to stay famous and rich and keep throwing out pitches at baseball games nobody else was allowed to go to. This is one of the greatest scandals and most infuriating betrayals in modern history, and it should be headlining news outlets from coast to coast, and it's not, because the left-wing media carried water for this evil little garden gnome and his political buddies for years. And they're not going to start being honest about it now. And if there were ever a time for the American people to demand accountability, it's now.
1,000%. 1,000%. Dredges up painful memories, and it's only a few years ago, I'm sure for you as much as for me. And it's amazing, isn't it, how the media have stopped asking questions about COVID-19. Why has there not been a royal commission into COVID-19 here in Australia, both at state level and federal level? There should be royal commissions everywhere into this. There's, as far as I know, and I'll double check this moving forward in the next week, there's only one party, I think, that is committed to a royal commission on COVID-19. I could be wrong. I'll double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's One Nation. So if there's no other reason to vote for One Nation, that's the reason. Because the Liberals won't put one in. The ALP won't put one in because they're both implicated like it. They're going to be like Fauci. They're going to invoke the fifth. And the way they invoke the fifth is not have a royal commission. We need to know what happened when in those national cabinet meetings that Morrison conducted, which was absurd. He was the prime minister, but he didn't want to take decisions that were only going to implicate him. He had to have every premier in there. They all had to go down with a sinking ship, and nearly all of them did, except for Dan Andrews. And even in the end, I think it got him a bit, and it's probably got Jacinta Allen this week. We can never have that happen in our history again. There has to be a royal commission, and if people can be held accountable, they need to be held accountable. We can't let people invoke the fifth like Fauci's done. We had politicians, left-wing media, bureaucrats, your local bloody doctor lecturing me. I had my doctors lecturing me about the vaccine because I refused to get it. It was right across the board. And as those gentlemen said, we all knew it was bullshit. Our lives were destroyed for 3 years. 3 years. The anniversaries that missed, the marriages that were missed, the funerals that you couldn't attend, the sick relatives you couldn't visit, the dying parents you couldn't console in their last moments. Just imagine that. The elderly that were on their deathbed, they couldn't have their children hold their hand while they died. One of the greatest things I ever had in my life is I sat by the bedside of my mother as she died. And I was there with all my brothers and sisters and my dad. And we all said the Lord's Prayer around her. She couldn't have got that during COVID. If you had a parent or a loved one that died, and we know all the stories, you couldn't do that. People need to be held accountable. And these hearings with Fauci brought it for me, just all rushing back. And while it's hard to go through, I'm glad it did, because we've got elections coming up. And we need to be asking questions. And I'm going to be writing to every MP next week, why is there no COVID-19 Royal Commission? Why isn't there one? And they can't give you an answer. They'll invoke the fifth by giving you some bullshit spin letter back written by a staffer. That's what they'll do. All right? They won't hold accountable. And our media won't hold them accountable. The media out of all this is probably the most guilty, because the protection we should have as citizens, this is what the media used to be about, is questioning politicians about their policy. They went along with this. Remember the Channel 9 ads? Get the injection? How many people have died earlier in their life? Did Shane Warne die because of the vaccine? He don't think so. I think we all had our suspicions of it. And this is the problem with the COVID vaccine. It was given out to billions of people. How many have had their lives shortened because of that vaccine? We'll never know. There's so many instances. But we can't go through that again. And there hasn't been enough of a retribution to ensure we don't go through that again. So it's in our hands a little bit. I'm going to be writing to all my MPs and trying to find out, are we going to get a COVID-19 Royal Commission? Jess Wilson should be answering that question. Ben Carroll now should be answering that question. Whoever the bloody hell is the leaders of One Nation should be answering that question. Now, on the One Nation, and again, I want to back One Nation, but One Nation has got to start providing us with a spokesperson who we can talk to. So tomorrow I've written to both Warren Pickering and Bianca. Oh God, sorry, Bianca, I can never remember your name, Conchichelli or something. I'll get it correct when I do get the chance to interview you, because you can correct me. And I've written to their headquarters up in Queensland and said, listen, guys, I'm going ahead with an empty chair meeting tomorrow. Get in contact with me. If you want to get a proper interview, I'll happily welcome it. I'm going to support you. But we're less than 18 weeks into a state election, and this shit here, we've got to hold people accountable. And One Nation, sorry, you got to get your candidates up so we can start talking about these things. So when your candidates get into Parliament, they can start pushing for a bloody Royal Commission. And I'm going to be writing to all of you to find out whether you'll push for a Royal Commission here in Victoria. We could have a new government in 20 weeks, and we could have 6 members in the upper house who will push for a Royal Commission into COVID-19. It's got to come about. So we've all got to start pushing for it. Just think. It wasn't just Fauci who was lying in his pockets. What about those CEOs of all those vaccine companies? What about a lot of their scientists, all that? Everyone who pushed the vaccine, who made millions out of this and made the rest of us suffer. You and me, all us little Joes, everyday Aussies, everyday Americans, everyday British, were made to suffer and go through this, while certain privileged people, we get accused of being privileged simply because we're white. If you're in certain positions of privilege where you can take advantage of other people's miseries, you can make hay while the sun shines. And there is the proof. There is the proof. And he's not the only one. He's the public face of it. He's getting thrown under the bus. There's others. I want to see Scott Morrison thrown under the bus. I want to see Dan Andrews thrown under the bus. I want to see Kerry Chant thrown under the bus. The dickhead we had here in Victoria, I want to see him thrown under the bus. Every health minister needs to be thrown under the bloody bus. Greg Hunt needs to go under the bus. That arrogant prick under Berejiklian in New South Wales needs to go under the bus. Every single one of them needs to face some sort of accountability if we can bring it about. And maybe we can bring that about. And the only way you can bring it about in Australia is a royal commission. There should be royal commissions in every state and federally into COVID-19. And we should be finding out exactly what went on behind this decision-making, why they thought it was appropriate to shut the country down. I mean, and this is just one of my stories that I had. In my Melbourne, I was coaching at Melbourne University, and we had to fly over to West Australia for a UBL game. And while we're in the air, West Australian Premier shut the borders. We landed at the Perth airport. I'd never been to Perth. I was really looking forward to it. When we landed at Perth, we were treated like criminals. We were treated like criminals. We had a conga line of police. We're escorted into our own cubicles. We're asked questions, asked to provide ID, police everywhere. And then we're escorted to an area where we had to wait for a red light fine home. So we flew 6 hours to get to Perth, waited 3 hours in the airport, and then flew 6 hours home. That was it. The only part of Perth we got to see was a certain section of the Perth airport. It was nuts. That was 2 teams, men's and women's, and everyone else on that plane. We all got turned around and sent back. 12 hours, nearly a whole day, actually. 12 hours on the plane, 3 hours in there. So there was 15 hours of our life we never got back. And then we came back to Victoria where the restrictions were all on. It was an insane time. And seriously, the police in Western Australia were rude, so rude. I mean, we were their fellow Australians, and they treated us with a contempt and arrogance you would never recognise from Australia. It was a horrible time, horrible time. So, and like I said, compared to what others went through, that was nothing for me. So I'm not going to play the victim while others went through so much more. But we've got an election coming up. Dan Andrews wasn't held accountable before. We've got to hold him accountable now. What's your Liberal politician going to do? What's Jess Wilson going to do? Is she going to commit to a COVID-19 Royal Commission? Is any of the media asking them these questions? Bet you they're not. I'll write to their office. I don't have the profile that a News 24 journalist has. Does Laura J still ask about this? Andrew Clennell, does he ask about this? Tom Connell? Do any of them go and ask the politicians about why haven't we had a Royal Commission into COVID-19? Are they going to re-ask these? If they're not asking these questions now after watching Fauci in America get grilled, why not? We will see in the coming days, won't we? So sorry for bringing the memories flooding back, but it's important. And I've dedicated the show to that today, and we've taken a bit long. Well, we have taken an hour because I did start late. So one good thing about showing those clips, I could finish my big cup of coffee. Anyway, got all that off. Important day. They're all important days these days. So anyway, as usual, God bless you. God bless your kids. God bless your grandkids. God bless your pets. There he is. He gets looked after. God bless your pets. God bless that flag. God bless this country. Let's get it back. And part of that getting back is those Royal Commissions into COVID. Anyway, have a good day, everyone. Friday, empty chair interview tomorrow, unless One Nation get in contact with me. The first of many, I think, will be empty chair interviews going on. So thanks for listening, and I will see you tomorrow morning around 9 o'clock. Bye for now.